dovetails, again, with a bit of extra information. Welcome back to the shop and the channel. So in one of my videos, I said I was going to do a deep dive into the Leigh dovetailing jig. This won't be so much as a deep dive as a moderate splash. I want to go into more detail on how I use this. Now, what inspired me to do this video is I've read on forums and I'm on a Facebook group dedicated to the Leigh jig, and I see a lot of ads to sell theirs, and reasons being I used it, I tried it, it's finicky, learning curve, all of which is true. There is a learning curve with this. It is finicky, but once you get it set up and working, it's a wonderful piece of equipment. And what I'm going to be doing with this while I do this demo is I'm going to be building the outsides of the box for the easel, rolling easel thing I made. It's going to hold these candles. And the top of the box, as you're looking down, it looks like this. It holds that many candles. You see all those holes are. The sides are going to be made of tiger maple. Now let me get out some of this wood. This did not come from the Home Depot as some of my other tiger maple did. So you can see it in camera. I'm going to take some mineral spirits. There we go. And give it a wipe. It's not, nope. There we go. Mineral spirits. Give it a wipe. And this is the wood I'm making the sides of the box out of. Now it's already milled, obviously, to thickness, to width, and to length. Now as I cut these dovetails, the tails are going to be facing out this way towards the viewer as this thing sits in front of everybody. So, there's a lot of other folks out there that do something on their dovetail, their Leigh jig. Sometimes they just cut on it. They give a quick description. Sometimes they miss things. I will probably miss things, but I want to go into as much detail as I can without making it too boring. So before we do any wood, let's talk about my rig, how I set it up, and how I use it. Now this is a Leigh D3 jig. This iteration of the Leigh dovetailing jig hit the streets about 1993, 94, so early 1990s. We purchased this about 1994, 95, so we've had it that long. The previous iteration had a different kind of dovetailing setup, but it had adjustable fingers. And that is why, when I was deciding to buy a dovetailing jig, I bought this one. And the reason is this. This is the secret. Infinitely adjustable dovetails. You can start with a large one in the middle and shrink them as you go to the edge, fat at the ends, shrink them, space them out any way you want, any way you want, any way you want. That's why I bought this jig, because of these fingers. Now, as far as the fingers are concerned, quick note, this is the tail side, this is the pin side. These lines here correspond to this angle here. So when you put your work together, it all kind of fits, providing you set it up correctly. And again, the finicky parts. I've updated the jig over the years as new parts came out for later jig models that could fit here, like these lockdown latch handles. I've added, this came much later, I added a dust collection from Leigh, the VRS dust collection system. It's a hood that sits where the router bit is, spinning, and dust collection connects here, and the router base moves it back and forth, and it sits on these two shelves, as you can see them in camera, here and here, with magnets. So basically it sits in there like this, and the router base moves it back and forth as you do the cuts. This thing will spill a whole lot of chips at you, because if you don't have any dust collection, there's no shield here. It just sprays you with it as you're cutting your dovetail. So this is a great add-on to the jig. Things that I've done, which isn't much, I put sticky tape sandpaper on this platform here and on the front platform here, the reason being better grip on the wood. When I had a large board that I was working on, it was very heavy, big hunk of cherry, And I clamped it in place. I thought I had it tight, and after I cut the dovetails, I realized it slipped slightly on this end. So I went and put the sandpaper on there to grip, so I could grip here, the wood won't move. Grip here, the wood won't move. Now, the suggestion by Leigh at the time was to build a box like this. I don't know if they still do that or not. And it sits high off of the bench for a reason, not because I'm tall, but because you can do larger pieces of wood. There's a video out there on my channel of me building the new base for this that clamps it to the workbench. Now, these are no longer offered by Leigh because Lee Valley Veritas bought Leigh Industries, so they own this jig now. Took them about a year to get all the parts and pieces and bits transitioned from Leigh's inventory system to Leigh Valley's inventory system, but they're done now, so you can get all the parts you need, and spare parts are readily available. And down here, this little piece of wood here just holds. I got tools and stuff in here that I use on the jig. Now, I've got this set up so when you turn on the router, the dust collection comes on. But let me go a little deeper into probably one of the most important things about owning and using a Leigh jig. And that is, if I grab my router, I've mentioned this before. First of all, one router dedicated to the jig. Or if you're going to go two routers, one for the straight bit, one for the dovetail bit, dedicate them to the jig. Don't use them for anything else. The reason being is this collar here has to be perfectly concentric with the collet. If it's off just a little bit, you'll have funny gaps on your dovetail. So this has to be perfectly concentric, as close as you possibly can get it to this. And this was one of the recommended routers. It's a Bosch. I got this on a refurb site, so it's really good condition. Now to do that, you can get these alignment collars. They can go into your collet, and then you can line up the collar, the guide collar, guide bush, so it's concentric. So I use only the larger diameter bits. When I say larger diameter, this is for 1/2 inch. This here is for 1/4 inch. I use the 8mm because I got more shank on them, but I do the alignment with the 1/2 inch part here. And once this is done, I can put the Leigh collar in there, collet, to grab the 8mm bits. And I highly recommend you get Leigh's bits. There are aftermarket bit sets for the jig, but I don't think they're as precise as well made as the Leigh ones are. They're a little pricey, but you're getting what you pay for. The manual, thick manual, has been touted by many as being one of the best written and illustrated manuals for a power tool in the world. I mean, it's really detailed. You read it through and find out what you need to do. I reference this a lot because even though I think I know how to use this, wait a minute, do I really know how to use this? The other manual I think is great, and this is just an aside from this video, the SawStop manual is really great too. But this is an older one, so this newer one's probably better because all the nice illustrations in here on how to do the alignments, how to set things up. Half blinds. I only do half blinds and through dovetails with the jig. There's other things you can do, and there's other finger kits you can get for it to do other kinds of joinery. I'm just with doing half blinds and through dovetails. The largest half blinds I've ever done, largest dovetails I've ever done was the casework I recently completed in a couple of my video series here. One from Mars Armoire and the other one for my chest of drawers. The big, tall, cherry pieces of stuff. Now it's time to get started. What I've done, and I didn't do that on camera, is I did my test piece. And this is the dovetail pattern I've decided on. Small in the middle, big one in the middle, and this faces outwards towards the viewer. So it gives it a little more visual interest because I can do a fat one and a skinny one, two skinny ones, or large and small. And this is just pine, piece of scrap pine. I've got my first piece of maple chucked up in here. Before I go to there, let me show you how we adjust the jig. It's already adjusted. I'm going to show you explain to you how it's done with this piece in place. Let's bring the camera over here and have a good look. make the initial setup or set up your dovetails with the pin guides facing you, facing outward. The workpiece is set so this is the inside of the box. More on that later. So this is the inside of the box facing outward. I've set up my distances that I want with the pin guides. When I've got that set the way I want, we're going to flip this over and set it up with the tail guides in place so we can make the cuts on the workpiece. Now these are the tail fingers. So I'm going to cut these represent the edges of a tail. So there's going to be a tail under here, the big tail under these two, and a tail under here. This is waist, and this is waist here. That'll be cut out. So waist, 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 and waist, and that'll be cut out. That'll give me my big tail in the middle and my small tails on the ends. I've left more space here because there's going to be some trim around this, and I just don't want to hide a tail with the trim. The guide itself, again, I'll put a picture of this side of the guide up, has a mark where you set it for cutting the tails, and there's just a single mark on both sides because this is a straight cut, basically in and out. And again, the workpiece is facing me with the inside of the box out towards me, and then we can go ahead and make the cut. Now I need, this is ½ inch, everything's ½ inch. So the next step is to mark the depth of the cut on here. So the way you mark this workpiece for the depth of the cut is very simple. You take the piece that's going to join it. Now these are all ½ inch, so it's all going to be the same. And you put it up to the fingers like this. So it's flush with the fingers, and you draw a line. Oops. That is the depth of the cut. Now some will say split the line. Some will say go a little below the line. Don't go above the line, because your tails and your pins will be inside the wood. If you go below the line, you'll have a little bit proud, so you can sand it to smooth. I usually try to split the line in half. So now what I can do is I can cut the tails here on this piece. And this is marked, you can't see it, but this is marked as inside. So I'll put it here, inside I. The adjoining piece is marked with an O, outside. You mark that, you cut that with the outside facing you. And this is part of the mathematical genius of this thing, is the way the parts are cut and how you cut them in the machine itself by rotating the wood that way. You'll see what I'm talking about. A couple of things to do when you're setting up that I didn't show earlier as I was setting up is you want a piece of wood here facing this way, clamped in place, and it butts right up against your workpiece and tries to prevent, hopefully prevents blowout in that direction as the router bit passes through the workpiece. And to make sure everything is coplanar and nice and level, I have another piece of ½ inch stock here that the fingers are sitting down on, so everything's nice and level and supported. So now we're going to cut both ends of this board, both ends of the other one. But at first I want to show you what I mean about splitting the line. So in order to split the line, you need the router up in view, and you need to have a view of that line. I think you know what's coming. But you want to set it up as you're going to cut the dovetails. So if you're using the VRS dust collector system, put it on its mounts and move this out of the way. This scoop is going to block your view of the workpiece, so move that out of the way. Then you take your router, and I've got the power off on the router. You place it on here. Now with mine, I have to make sure that it's level front to back, and router doesn't wobble. I bring it over here and put it on here. And that used to come up a little bit. What I meant by come up a little bit is I had to bring this side up just a touch, because these parts here that hold this in place, they're not snug, they're not tight, they don't have any indexing parts to keep them in the same place all the time. So you have to make that adjustment. But you make that adjustment once before you start all your cuts. So the next thing to do is turn the router around, because that's where the adjustments are, right here. And we're going to now split the line. I've added I'm going to unplug the router for now. Turn on this light. I've got this little light that I use for, eyes getting old. So let's go underneath and start measuring what we need to measure. So I'm going to lower that down close. Now, the thing about these bits is these are longer than standard bits, so you can do things like this. So it has deeper reach depending on your workpiece and whatever. So let's bring this down. And there we go. So, yeah. Let me see if I can get the camera in here to actually see this, because this is kind of a tight thing. As I do this, it might seem a little off because of parallax. The camera's shooting up at an angle, whereas I can look at the line here directly with my eyeball. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dial down the cutter. You see the corner of the dovetail bit? I want to bring it to that line in the middle and I'm going to go to the bottom of that line. So I got a tiny bit proud of the workpiece from the actual box. Lock it in place. Now, sometimes when you lock these things, they move. I think that's good. So you see what I mean here? I picked the corner of the bit to intersect and come down just at the bottom of the pencil line to cut my tails with. So I'm going to go cut all these pieces. You've seen me do that before. I don't have to shoot that. But I'm going to go cut all these pieces, and then we'll come back and set up for the tails. Excuse me, set up for the pins. I'll get it right one day. So, cut it off camera. Here's the finished dovetails, my asymmetric dovetails. I'm sure more than a few of you noticed how wobbly this thing was. What I forgot to do is put the bench dogs in the back. I'm going to redesign this base a little bit so I don't have to use the bench dogs anymore, but the bench dogs are in the back and it's now much more stable. So, as I said earlier, I cut these with the inside facing me, like so, and then I rotate it this way and cut the other end. So both of the long boards are done now. Now I need to do the short boards, and I'm going to do them the same way. That's part of the magic math. But I'm going to do that in the next video because this video is bumping up against 18 minutes. So, next time around, we're going to do a complete setup and run on the the pins, and I'll show you how you're going to get your pins to fit just right. It's something that is made kind of clear in the manual, but if you don't, I didn't read that part initially, but I've learned. You always have to learn. So we'll show you how to get these to fit these just about perfect. Well, as perfect as humans can do, which is not much. So until next time, make great things out of wood and maybe consider a Leigh jig.